Olivia Tran had always believed in loyalty. For 20 years, she had given everything to financial prosperity, a company she once considered her second home. She had weathered economic downturns, guided major clients through financial crises, and played a key role in securing multi-million-dollar contracts. And yet, here she was, sitting in a cold, sterile conference room across from a man half her age, being handed a termination letter. Kyle Nguyen, the newly appointed CEO, was all polished arrogance. He leaned back in his chair, exuding the smug confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences. Beside him, Denise from HR sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact. Olivia kept her expression neutral. She had seen this coming. 3 weeks ago, an email had mistakenly landed in her inbox, a confidential exchange between Kyle and Denise. The subject line? Workforce Optimization Strategy. In it, her name had been listed among several senior employees targeted for termination. The justification? Too old to adapt. Too expensive to keep. Time for fresh energy. That email had changed everything. She had spent the last 3 weeks not grieving, not panicking, but preparing. And now, as Kyle slid the manila folder across the table, she felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Olivia, Kyle began, his voice smooth but detached. As part of our restructuring efforts, we've made the difficult decision to eliminate certain roles, including yours. Denise cleared her throat, shifting in her seat. Of course, we appreciate your years of service. Inside the folder, you'll find details of your severance package, including 3 months of extended health benefits. Olivia didn't reach for the folder. Instead, she simply folded her hands on the table and looked directly at Kyle. I see, she said evenly. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. They had expected shock, maybe anger. Some pleading, perhaps. But Olivia had already grieved this moment 3 weeks ago. Kyle cleared his throat, regaining his composure. We'll need you to vacate your office by this afternoon. Your keycard access will be revoked at 5 p.m. IT will handle the collection of your company devices. Then, with a smirk, he added, we trust this transition will be smooth. Olivia exhaled slowly, keeping her expression unreadable. She finally reached for the folder, flipping it open just enough to glance at its contents. Severance pay. Non-disclosure agreement. A polite but final goodbye. She closed it and smiled. Thank you, she said smoothly. I've learned a lot here. Kyle gave a quick nod, already turning his attention back to his laptop, dismissive, as if she had already ceased to exist. Olivia stood up, tucking the folder under her arm. But before leaving, she paused at the door, casting one last glance over her shoulder. Kyle had no idea what was coming. She stepped out into the hallway, walking toward her office for what would be the last time. And yet, she didn't feel like she was leaving in defeat. Because Monday morning was coming. And by then, everything would change. As Olivia walked out of that office, a quiet confidence settled over her. She wasn't defeated, far from it. She had a plan. But what do you think she's going to do next? If you were Olivia, how would you handle this situation? Would you walk away and start fresh? Or would you make sure Kyle and his company felt the full weight of their mistake? Comment below and let me know your thoughts. By the way, where are you listening from? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far our revenge stories reach. And if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to EN True Tales so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to. Because Olivia? She's not done yet. And by Monday morning, Kyle will wish he had never underestimated her. Now, let's see how she sets her plan in motion. Olivia stepped out of the conference room, her heels clicking against the marble floor with precise, deliberate steps. The office felt eerily different now, as if the walls themselves knew what had just transpired. A few of her colleagues looked up from their desks, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and pity. She ignored them. Her office was at the far end of the hall, past the executive wing where she had once been included in major decision-making discussions. Now, she was just another discarded name in Kyle's grand vision of a modernized workforce. She closed the door behind her and exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was about erasure, Kyle's attempt to wipe away decades of experience, of relationships, of impact. She turned to her desk, scanning her belongings. Framed photos of her late husband and 2 children. A collection of awards, including one for outstanding client relations from 5 years ago, ironically, presented by the previous CEO, who had valued her expertise. And then, there was the Min-Fat Holdings contract file, sitting neatly on her desk. The very reason Kyle had kept her around until today. Olivia picked up the document and ran her fingers along the cover. She had spent years nurturing this relationship, making sure that Min-Fat Holdings trusted her, not just the company she worked for. Kyle thought he was taking her out of the equation. He had no idea that she was the equation. She reached for her personal phone and tapped a familiar number. It rang once before a deep, familiar voice answered. Olivia. What a surprise. I was just about to call you. Chairman Tran Din Min's voice carried its usual warmth. She could hear the quiet hum of a restaurant in the background. I hope I'm not interrupting your lunch, she said smoothly. Not at all, he said. Tell me, are we still on track for next week's contract signing? There was a pause. Then Olivia smiled. Actually, Min, she said, her voice calm but precise, I think we should talk. A short silence on the other end. Then, the sound of a chair being pulled back. How soon can you get here? I'm on my way. She ended the call, tucked the contract file into her bag, and took one last look at her office. By the end of today, this place would no longer matter. But by Monday? By Monday, everything would change. Olivia stepped out of the office building for what would likely be the last time. The crisp autumn air greeted her as she walked to her car, her mind sharp and focused. Kyle thought he had ended her career today. But this was just the beginning. As she navigated through the city streets, she replayed every conversation she had ever had with Chairman Tran Din Min. Min-Fat Holdings wasn't just another client to her. Over the years, she had become a trusted advisor, a confidant in high-stakes financial decisions. Unlike Kyle, who saw clients as numbers on a spreadsheet, she understood that trust was the real currency in business. By the time she arrived at the restaurant, Chairman Min was already waiting in a private dining room, a fresh pot of tea steaming in front of him. He was a man in his late 60s, a veteran of the business world who had seen his fair share of corporate maneuvering. As she sat across from him, she could see the curiosity in his eyes. Olivia, he said, pouring her a cup of tea. I assume this is not just a social visit. She smiled, accepting the tea but not drinking it yet. I have some news. As of today, I am no longer with Financial Prosperity. Min's expression didn't change, but she could see the slight pause in his movements, the calculated stillness of a man who processed information faster than he let on. Kyle, he asked. She nodded. They're restructuring. Bringing in younger talent. I suppose 20 years of experience no longer fits into their vision. Min leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the table. And yet, they were happy to have you finalize our contract last week. Olivia exhaled softly. That's exactly why they waited until today to let me go. They assumed the deal was locked in, that it didn't matter who was handling it anymore. Min let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. Fools. She didn't need to say more. Min understood the weight of relationships in business. This wasn't just about paperwork, it was about trust. And trust didn't transfer just because a new CEO decided to swap out his team. He took a sip of tea, considering her carefully. Tell me, Olivia, what do you plan to do next? She met his gaze, her next words measured but clear. I've received an offer from East Asia Financial Consulting, she said. They're interested in bringing me on as a senior financial strategist. But more importantly, they value long-term relationships. Min tilted his head slightly, understanding the implication. And would you be handling our account personally? She smiled. If that's something you'd be open to. There was a pause, then Min chuckled again, this time with real amusement. You've always been sharp, Olivia. That's why I trusted you all these years. He set his cup down and leaned forward, his voice quieter now. Consider the deal with financial prosperity void. I don't do business with people I don't trust. A slow wave of satisfaction washed over Olivia, but she kept her composure. Min, I appreciate that, she said. But I want you to be sure. This is a significant contract. He held up a hand, stopping her. I don't need to think about it. I built my company the same way you built your career, on trust. Kyle doesn't understand that, but he will soon enough. Olivia nodded, taking a sip of her tea at last. She didn't need revenge. She only needed Monday. Kyle Nguyen was having the best afternoon of his career. As he leaned back in his leather chair, he felt a rush of satisfaction. He had done it, successfully executed the next phase of his plan to modernize financial prosperity. Olivia Tran, one of the last remaining relics of the company's outdated structure, was finally gone. He glanced at the clock. By now, she would be clearing out her office, packing up her framed awards and old-fashioned business philosophies. It was time for a new era, an era where he called the shots. His phone buzzed. Denise from HR. He picked up, still in a good mood. Yes? Sir, you need to see this. Her voice had an edge of urgency. Kyle frowned. See what? The Min Fat deal. Chairman Min just called. He's canceling the contract. Kyle sat up straight. What? Denise hesitated. He said, and I quote, I do not do business with people I don't trust. A cold weight settled in Kyle's stomach. He shot up from his chair, yanking his laptop open as he clicked into the contract dashboard. The $8.5 billion deal was gone. Vanished. He grabbed his phone and dialed Chairman Min's number. It went straight to voicemail. His pulse quickened. This wasn't possible. The contract was supposed to be finalized next week. The paperwork was ready. They had already factored this deal into next quarter's projections. Losing it would send shockwaves through the company's finances. Kyle took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Maybe Min just needed reassurance. Maybe this was salvageable. His phone buzzed again, another notification. He clicked on it. And then his stomach dropped. A breaking news alert flashed across his screen. East Asia Financial Consulting secures multi-billion-dollar deal with Min Fat Holdings. Olivia Tran joins as senior strategist. Kyle stared at the headline, his mind going blank. No. No, this couldn't be happening. He clicked the article. There it was, a photo of Olivia Tran, shaking hands with Chairman Min. The same woman he had dismissed just hours ago, the woman he had considered replaceable. She hadn't just walked away. She had walked straight to their biggest competitor. Kyle's vision blurred for a second as panic settled in. Losing this contract meant millions in revenue wiped out overnight. It meant investor panic, board scrutiny, and financial instability. His hands tightened into fists. How? How had she done this so fast? And then he remembered. That look in her eyes when she left his office. That small, knowing smile. She hadn't been caught off guard. She had been waiting for this. Kyle slammed his laptop shut and stormed out of his office, his mind racing. He had to fix this. Or by Monday morning, it wouldn't just be Olivia's career that had ended. It would be his. Monday morning arrived with an air of quiet anticipation. For Olivia Tran, it marked the beginning of something new. For Kyle Nguyen, it was the beginning of his downfall. At precisely 7:30 a.m., Olivia stepped out of the sleek black car that had been sent for her. The offices of East Asia Financial Consulting towered above her, bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. She adjusted the lapels of her tailored navy blue suit, feeling a calm satisfaction settle over her. She had spent the weekend finalizing the details of her transition. Contracts had been signed, teams had been informed, and now, she was officially stepping into her new role. As she walked through the building's grand glass entrance, she was greeted warmly by the receptionist. "Welcome to East Asia Financial, Ms. Tran. Mr. Hong is expecting you." She nodded, stepping into the private elevator. The doors closed with a soft chime, enclosing her in the smooth, polished interior. Down the street, inside the headquarters of Financial Prosperity, the mood was entirely different. Kyle Nguyen was pacing the executive boardroom, his phone pressed against his ear, his suit jacket hanging open as if he had thrown it on in a hurry. "Get me Chairman Min on the line," he snapped at his assistant. "He's not taking calls from us, sir," she responded hesitantly. Kyle's grip tightened on the phone. Min wasn't taking his calls. Investors had already begun pulling their support, spooked by the sudden loss of the Min-Fat deal. And to make matters worse, over the weekend, several other major clients had reached out to Olivia, expressing their interest in following her to East Asia Financial. The board was in crisis mode. Kyle had spent all of Sunday drafting an emergency statement, scrambling to reassure clients that the company was still stable. But deep down, he knew the truth. It wasn't. He turned to Denise from HR, his voice tight with frustration. "You should have made her sign a stricter non-compete agreement." Denise shifted uncomfortably. Her contract was standard. "We assumed she wouldn't." "Assumed?" Kyle interrupted, his voice rising. "You assumed Olivia Tran, the most strategic person in this company, would just sit back and do nothing?" Denise fell silent. Kyle exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. The board meeting was in less than an hour. He needed to salvage something, anything. His phone buzzed. A notification. He glanced down. And felt his stomach lurch. Breaking news, Min-Fat Holdings announces expanded partnership with East Asia Financial. His fingers trembled as he clicked the article. Min-Fat Holdings has officially cut ties with Financial Prosperity, citing leadership concerns and a preference for more stable financial advisors. Olivia Tran, the firm's newest senior financial strategist, has played a key role in securing the expanded deal, which is now worth over $12 billion, significantly larger than the original contract. Kyle's face drained of color. $12 billion. She hadn't just taken the contract. She had made it even bigger. The room felt suddenly suffocating. This wasn't just a bad quarter. This was a career-ending disaster. His assistant cleared her throat hesitantly. "Sir, the board members are waiting for you." Kyle swallowed hard, straightening his tie. For the first time since taking over as CEO, he felt small. And as he walked toward the boardroom, he realized something that sent ice through his veins. Olivia hadn't just left the company. She had outplayed him entirely. Olivia settled into her new office, a spacious corner suite with a breathtaking view of the city skyline. A fresh bouquet of white orchids sat on her desk, a welcoming gift from Chairman Min himself. She had just finished reviewing the latest financial projections for East Asia Financial when her phone buzzed. A name flashed across the screen. Kyle Nguyen. She smirked. For a brief moment, she considered ignoring it. But curiosity got the best of her. She picked up. "Olivia," Kyle's voice was strained, almost desperate. "Good morning, Kyle," she said smoothly. There was a long pause. She could hear his hesitation, his pride struggling against the weight of his failure. "I need to talk," he finally said. "In person." Olivia glanced at the time. "I have a full schedule today." "Please," Kyle pressed. "Just a few minutes." A part of her knew exactly what this was, a final, pathetic attempt to salvage what little dignity he had left. She glanced at the gold-trimmed invitation on her desk. Tonight, East Asia Financial was hosting an exclusive gala to celebrate their monumental contract with Min-Fat Holdings. A perfect place for one last lesson. "Fine," she said. "I'll be at the Grand Orchid Hotel tonight for an event." If you really need to talk, you know where to find me. That evening, Olivia arrived at the gala in an elegant midnight blue gown, poised and confident. The event hall was filled with industry leaders, journalists, and executives who had all heard about her spectacular move from financial prosperity to East Asia Financial. And then, right on cue, Kyle walked in. He looked haggard, unshaven, no longer the smug CEO he had been just days ago. "Olivia," he said as he approached her. She turned, raising an eyebrow. "Kyle." He hesitated before speaking. He exhaled, clearly swallowing his pride. "I made a mistake." Olivia sipped her champagne. "Which one?" His jaw tightened. "Letting you go." She smiled. "I told you before, Kyle. Experience isn't something you can replace so easily." He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, the board is pressuring me. We're hemorrhaging clients. They want me to find a way to bring you back. Maybe as a consultant, just to stabilize things." Olivia tilted her head, feigning contemplation. Then she let out a soft laugh. "You still don't get it, do you?" she said. "You didn't just lose me, Kyle. You lost the trust of everyone who mattered. Min-Fat Holdings, your investors, even your own board. I don't fix sinking ships." Kyle's face fell completely. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "You thought I was replaceable," she whispered. "Turns out, you were." She stepped away, leaving him standing alone in the center of a ballroom filled with the very people who now saw him as a failure. Minutes later, her phone buzzed. A message from one of her contacts at Financial Prosperity. "Kyle Wynn just resigned. Effective immediately." Olivia smiled. She lifted her glass, turning back to Chairman Min and the other executives. The night was just beginning. And for her? So was a new era of success. And that, my friends, is the power of strategy, resilience, and knowing your worth. Olivia was underestimated, dismissed, and replaced, only for her to prove that experience and loyalty are irreplaceable. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about standing up for yourself, knowing when to walk away, and making sure that those who wronged you feel the weight of their choices. Olivia didn't lash out. She didn't beg. She planned, executed, and won on her own terms. But what do you think? Do you believe Kyle got what he deserved? Or do you think Olivia should have handled things differently? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Press 2 if you loved this story and think Olivia's revenge was perfect. Press 7 if you didn't like it and would have wanted a different ending. And don't just stop there, tell me why. Which character did you relate to the most? Before you go, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. And if you want more thrilling revenge stories like this, subscribe to True Tales and turn on notifications, so you never miss an update. Because trust me, the next story might just be even more satisfying. I'll be reading your comments, so let's talk down below. See you in the next one.